seat. We're going to allow the attorneys to ask you a few questions. I ask that you respond in strong voice for us.
Yes, sir.
State.
Thank you. Good morning, ma'am. Before today, have you heard anything about this case or about the investigation or about the defendant, whether it be on the TV news, in the newspapers, or even from talking to people on the street or since you've been in court?
I've heard of it, yes.
And how have you heard of it?
To be honest with you, I can't remember. It was a long time ago. I just heard of it, and then it was brought up again on Monday when we were all waiting.
All waiting, how was it brought up? By
People out loud, because they were so quiet in the room, and they were saying that they think that this may be the case that we're called in for. That was to the extent of it.
Okay. Was it one individual or more than one individual?
It's more than one.
Okay. As a result of what you heard, did you draw any impression or opinion about the defendant's guilt?
No, sir. Actually, I was debating whether, because I know that you're not supposed to know anything, so I'm like, well, now that I heard it, and I heard about it like 2 years ago, do I know it or do I not know it? And then I took it back to school, if you know something, and it's not something that I knew about. Even when you all were discussing it yesterday, I didn't know any of the facts.
Okay.
But I did hear about it, so I want to be honest.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Is there anything about, was there one particular source of comment in the jury pool that you recall, or was it multiple people?
It was multiple people.
Okay. Anything you heard, is that going to affect your ability to serve as a fair and impartial juror?
No, sir.
The defendant, like anyone charged with a crime in the state of Florida, is entitled by our Constitution to be presumed innocent. That means the starting point for the jury is that she is innocent, and that presumption stays with her until and unless the prosecution shows by evidence in court that she's guilty, and shows and proves that beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
Can you give this defendant a presumption of innocence, despite what you've heard or about this case?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you hold the state of Florida to its burden of proving her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt?
Yes, the state of Florida, yes.
Okay. Did you see any photographic or video images in the past of the defendant?
Trying to think about, I don't even know. To be honest with you, no, because I didn't even know it was her on yesterday.
All right, well, thank you, appreciate that. Can you form your verdict, base your verdict on solely the evidence you hear in court and set aside whatever somebody may have said out in the jury room?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you have any doubt about that?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, nothing further.
Thank you, Park.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You had if I understand you correctly, you had very little, if any, knowledge about this dating back to the occurrence.
Yes, sir.
So when you came to the courthouse, I guess it would be fair to say that you didn't have any knowledge about the facts.
No, sir.
Did you, by any chance, and I know that things happen. I think people start talking. You mentioned that there were conversations going on. A lot of people were talking. Was this in another place besides this floor of this building, or is this another place?
It was in this floor, in that room, and because I was the last 50, so they put like the first 100. They didn't give us a tag, so they had us go into the room. So it was in that room because in the morning, everybody was we just got here. So it was when they put us in the room, and it was getting out throughout the day, and it was taking a while, and people were asking questions.
Okay.
And then it was actually when we came back from lunch.
Okay. All right. And so it was here on this floor. It was in that room over there.
Mm-hmm.
And this would have been on Monday?
Monday, yes, sir.
Have there been any conversations that you were aware of that took place today?
Not today.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Did you find yourself in any specific conversation that you can recollect in which you became aware of specific details and they may or may not have been accurate, but just whatever somebody may have told you? Do you remember getting involved in a specific conversation where a potential juror may have been saying, well, this is what I think happened, or this is what did happen or something like that?
Well, there was a potential juror who was actually just talking out loud, and we were sitting there, and I actually made a comment like, you're saying a little bit too much information if this is correct.
Oh, okay. And that's the only conversation of that type that you can recall?
That was the only conversation.
How many people were present for that?
That's what I'm saying, if you go into that room, it's very quiet and there's a big square, so it's just like talking out loud. So he really wasn't talking directly to me. He was just talking
Oh,
out loud, and that's when I said, whoa, you're it's a little bit too much information. Right, yeah, exactly.
And I guess I would just ask you this, that is there anything that you heard during the course of this monologue, the speaking, that influences how you feel about what should happen or shouldn't happen in this trial if you're selected to be a juror?
Not at all.
Do you have any fixed opinion about guilt or innocence, or do you feel like you have fixed opinion about what happened?
In regards to this, no, because I don't have any information. I would have to find it out.
So no detail. So you're waiting to hear.
Exactly.
Now you of course heard the judge talk about listening to the evidence as it's presented to you by witnesses here in the courtroom. So you're comfortable with that approach? You can listen and learn just from that?
Yes, sir.
You don't bring anything to the table from prior knowledge?
No, sir.
Or from the conversations that you heard in this room there?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, and you've heard of the principle, we have in America, innocent until proven guilty?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so that's what they refer to when you hear somebody talk about a presumption of innocence. As we speak right now, Ms. Schenecker is innocent and would stay that way until such time as the state, if they're able, could present enough evidence to overcome that burden or that presumption. Are you comfortable with that approach to this?
I'm very comfortable. I would hope so.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry.
No further questions, Judge.
Thank you, ma'am. You may step up.
Thank you. Oh, to the right, to the right.
Counsel, you can step up for a second. You can have a seat, sir. I'm going to make a brief inquiry.
Okay.
I'm going to ask, I want a direct answer. Yesterday, or at any time since you came here to your jury service, have you, in the presence of any other prospective jurors, discussed this case or made any comments concerning this case?
Yes.
Why don't you be specific and tell me where you said it, to whom you said it, and what you said?
It was in the room when I was sitting there with some other people, and I just made the assumption that this had to be jury selection for this case because it was taking so long.
All right. And what did you say?
All right, we just discussed a couple of things that I heard on the news about the case, and about what happened.
Be specific.
That she had shot her 2 children, and it was pretty terrible.
Anything else?
I'm not going to remember.
Who was present?
I'm not sure the ladies' names. There was a couple of ladies that were sitting there.
So you essentially said this just to 2 ladies?
Yeah, we're just sitting at the corner of the table, just shooting the breeze, talking about different things. And
Anybody during the course of that conversation tell you not to do that?
no,
You discuss it in front of anyone else or make any other comments?
no.
Okay. Follow up from the state,
No, sir, thank you.
from the defense?
Sir, did anybody else participate in this conversation you've been describing for us?
The one lady didn't know anything about it. I guess she doesn't watch the news. And the other one didn't really. It was just, making a general statement.
So that you were the primary contributor to the conversation?
Just, making the assumption of why we were here, why it was taking so long. It had to have been for that case.
And you said you discussed what you heard. Specifically, what did you say?
Pretty much what I heard from the news.
Can you tell us exactly what that was?
That she had killed her 2 children.
And what else, if anything?
That's pretty much it.
Do you remember any other details that you offered in the conversation that you had heard from the media?
No, I mean, it's pretty much, that she had shot her 2 children, and I heard something about it being premeditated. Pretty much it.
And have you formulated any kind of opinion about the way it's
Everybody's
supposed to go?
entitled to due process, So,
Have you formulated an opinion about guilt or innocence based on the things you heard?
no, I couldn't say I have. I'd have to see the facts.
You couldn't say that you have. Are you able to say that you have not?
No, I haven't formed an opinion. Like I said, I have to see the facts. I mean, the obvious things are already what's stated,
What do you mean by that, sir?
What I heard on the news, that 2 people are dead.
don't have any other questions, Judge.
All right, Counsel, you can step up. Counsel. All right, with that, thank you, sir. You may step out.
All right, thank you.
With that, number 105, on motion of the state without objection, the defense is excused for cause. And 131 may leave now too. (132) indicates knowledge and hardship.
Good morning, ma'am. I think it was yesterday when you indicated that service on this jury for the next few weeks would cause a hardship. Would you explain, please?
Yeah, it was my hardship. My husband travels a lot for work, and we have a daughter that's in elementary school that I have to drive to and from school, so the past couple days I've just had to finagle it a lot. Where next week he's going to go to different places, and the next couple weeks he's got to go between 2 and 4 days a week.
Okay. If you were to be selected as a juror, if both parties thought, you know, she's the ideal juror, would you be able to, even though it might be difficult, call in some favors or make arrangements for other transportation for your daughter?
Yes, it just would be harder.
I understand. We're not minimizing that.
Right.
We just need to kind of ask those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other hardship that you had in mind when you
No, just
raised?
that.
Okay, and I'm not minimizing it by
No,
saying
no.
any other hardship.
Right.
Everybody's juggled that at one point or another. You also indicated, ma'am, that you had some knowledge about this case from information outside the court before you came in. Is that right?
My mom and I talked about it when it happened.
Okay.
Because one of her coworkers' daughters was friends with the girl that was killed. So we talked about it a little bit back then because of that. She went to school with her.
One of your mother's co-workers' daughter went to school with
And was
Kayla
friends with
Schenecker.
her.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. did you know, did you have any conversation with your mother's coworker?
No.
Or just your mom?
Just my mom.
Okay.
And my mom had conversations with her coworker.
Okay. Did you see any media coverage about this?
Just on the TV back then. I haven't recently.
Okay. Do you remember hearing Judge Battle's summary about this case he read the other day? Thank you. Do you recall anything specific about what you saw in the media that was any different than what Judge Padgett told you about?
I just remember her walking out of
I'm sorry. I've been around here too long. Anyway, ma'am, Judge Battles told you. Anything different that you learned about in the media?
No.
Do you recall seeing any photographic images or any video images of the defendant back at the time?
Yes. Well, I mean, walking in or out of the jail. Or in or out of...
And did you draw any impression or conclusion about either the defendant's guilt or innocence or her state of mind as a result of seeing that?
In my head, I was thinking she was guilty, but I didn't. Is that what you mean?
Well, whatever your thought or reaction was upon seeing that. I mean, did you...
My reaction was if there was a state of mental illness, I would think that somebody would kill themselves, not their kids, is what I was thinking at the time.
Okay. Can you tell me about the conversations you had with your mother? Did she recount or relate to you what her coworker had said?
She said that the girl was very smart and that she was already trying to think about colleges. She's my older daughter's age, and so she was trying to think about colleges, and that she was really smart and she was in difficult classes, and she was in I think a small school, and they had classes together, so the coworker's daughter was really upset.
Okay. Anything else that you discussed with your mother about the incident? Okay, I can see you, but we have to make a...
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
No, they had mentioned that the husband had tried to call and warn somebody, maybe, but that was it, and I don't know.
All right. Is there anything about what you saw in the media or anything about what you were told when you discussed this with your mother that would affect your ability to serve as a fair and impartial juror in this case?
I think it would be hard for me to give her a fair shot because I think that, because of what I said earlier, I don't know for sure.
Oh, we talked about quite a few things.
Okay. I think it would be hard to give somebody a shot that killed their kids. And I'm just telling you the truth of what I would have a hard time.
Okay.
I think I would have a hard time.
All right, and excuse me for the next few questions, but I need to kind of
Okay.
probe that a little bit, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
The law presumes everyone charged with a crime to be innocent until the state overcomes that by proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt in court with evidence. Your difficulty, as you just expressed it, would that difficulty cause you difficulty in presuming Ms. Schenecker innocent of the charges?
I think so.
Okay, and therefore, would it also affect your ability to serve as a juror in this case?
I think I would have a hard time because I think that she's guilty already, and I know you're not supposed to.
Okay. Thank you for your candor, ma'am. I appreciate it.
Any questions, Council?
No, Judge.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. 132. Clerk will call on the motion of the defense without objection from the state. 133 indicates valid. Have a seat. They're going to ask you a few questions. I ask you to respond in a strong voice so we can hear you up here, okay?
Thank you.
State.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Yesterday you indicated that you had some information or knowledge about this case that you learned from an outside source. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, before we get into that, it's incumbent upon me to indicate on the record that I have some professional familiarity with your husband who years ago in the 90s, I think, covered the courthouse for a local newspaper. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. It wasn't a social relationship. I don't recall, and pardon me for that, whether we had met before.
Yes.
And see how rude that is of me not to remember. I'm sorry.
Okay. Did you want me to elaborate?
Well, just for the record, that we have met before, was that going to affect anything, your ability to serve? Was it socially, I think, in some setting? Or?
Socially through my husband and my cousin,
Who is your cousin?
Jay Trustvant.
Oh, of course, okay. All right. Let me get on, I needed to put that on the record. Let me go into the issue of your knowledge before you came here. What was the source of the information that you heard?
Newspaper.
Okay. Was that recent or was that closer to the time of the event?
Closer to the time of the event and somewhat recent.
Okay. Are you familiar with the concept of the presumption of innocence?
Yes.
That the starting point for the jury in this case must be that the defendant is innocent, and that stays with her until and unless the state of Florida, the prosecution, proves her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt by evidence in court.
Yes.
Okay. With that in mind, do you recall what Judge Battles had read to you as far as a summary of the case? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like you, if you could, to tell us everything that you remember having learned from the media that was in any way different from or in addition to the summary that Judge Battles provided, if you could.
Just the exact details of the reporting in the newspaper, the account of the crime, of the police responding to the home and the children and the arrest.
If you would, please, provide as many of those exact details as you referred to them that you can recall.
Can you give me a starting point as to how you...
Oh, sure. Tell us first what you recall about the reporting of the incident itself.
That it seemed to be prompted from some emails that the defendant had sent to family members via Facebook or something, where this person, she was writing on the eve of the murders, and then somehow family members prompted the police to respond to the home. I'm not sure if I'm answering what you're...
Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
You are, absolutely.
And then how the scene that they found, how they found the defendant, where they found her, what she was doing at the time, the questioning by the police of the defendant as to what had happened, and her retelling of what had happened, and finding the children and taking her to court, taking her to jail.
Okay. Do you recall seeing video or photographic images of the defendant in those reports?
Photos from the newspaper.
Okay. Did you draw any impression or opinion concerning either her guilt or innocence or her state of mind as a result of having viewed those photographs of this defendant's image?
I thought she was terribly, terribly mentally ill. I thought that was struck with the impression that this person was very ill.
Okay. Have you formed any impression or opinion as to the defendant's guilt of the charges in this case?
Yes, in that it seemed evident from the accounts that I read that she had murdered her children.
From your exposure to the media and the impressions or opinions that you've arrived at, do you believe you're capable of affording the defendant her presumption of innocence in this case?
I believe I can take in all the information presented. I'm not sure.
Okay,
That's a hard one, I'm sorry.
No, and we know it's kind of a hypothetical question at this stage, but nonetheless one we have to kind of probe. Simply stated, it means, can you give the defendant that starting point that she's entitled to, meaning she's innocent at this point until and unless the state of Florida convinces me with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that she is guilty.
I can begin at a starting point with you. I have a duty. I believe I have an obligation and a duty to do that. So I believe that.
All right.
So I don't know how the two go together, but I do hold those two thoughts in tandem,
Okay.
oddly.
And that's, we're trying to reconcile the conflicting ideas. I understand that. One of the issues kind of caught up in all of this is whether you can form and base your verdict exclusively on the evidence presented in court and setting aside whatever you may have seen or read about in the newspapers. Do you believe you're capable of doing that?
Yes.
Is there anything your knowledge that you really to speak from the media that you think would prevent you from being a fair and impartial judge?
No.
Thank you, ma'am.
Questions? Fred?
You apparently got quite a bit of detail from your reading of the newspapers back in 2011 when this took place. You started to kind of give us an outline of it, and I wasn't sure if you knew exactly how much detail we were asking you for. I would like for you to recall for us everything that you think you learned about this case from the newspaper articles in more detail, if you could.
It seems like a lot. And again, it's hard to pick a starting point from, it seems so long ago, and I feel like I have little snippets of information, everything from, I even assumed there was a head trauma previous to the client here.
Well, let's start where you're comfortable with it begins, as far as the detail you learned about this case from the newspapers you read.
I guess I could begin with this, what I recounted to Mr. Pruner about the fact that I just read the account of the crime scene, and
What do you remember, for example, about the crime scene?
Detail. That there's a young boy, I believe, had been picked up from soccer practice and was shot in the car, and I think he was still in the car, and that the young girl was in her bedroom, I believe, by the computer. I think she'd been doing her homework or something, and the mom was downstairs in the lanai smoking and drinking, but I think at some point she had been communicating electronically with people, and I was surprised at the communication there between the mother and the general public, or a few people maybe who were reading, and it sounded like family members.
You mentioned that in terms of that, do you have any knowledge, or do you think you have some knowledge about what communications were initiated?
I'm sorry.
You say that there was communications, like emails you referred to.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have knowledge, or do you think you have knowledge about the nature of those communications?
I have knowledge that I thought she was implying some guilt and sorrow about something that had occurred, but she was being fabulous about what had occurred, and that she was upset and had done something that prompted family members to respond, thinking they had been concerned previously and now were responding to what they thought was foretelling something amiss at the home.
Did you learn anything about the arrival of law enforcement to the location?
All I remember is that they came in, and I don't think she even came to the door. I think she was just stayed in one spot, and they came in and found her, but there was blood in the scene where she was throughout. So I don't think they saw the children first. They saw her, but they saw blood.
Did you recall ever in the course of your readings of the newspapers comments made by law enforcement and that the press relayed to the public, people like you that read them?
Reading comments by law enforcement to the media? Nothing atypical than stating the facts of what they saw at the scene. I don't remember anything. I'm not sure I don't remember anything.
I was just wondering if you had a specific memory of anything that was said by law enforcement released to the public at that time. So you're saying just some standard things? Do you remember following this case in the newspapers as it moved along in the court system?
Yes.
For example, would it be fair to say that you read articles about it every time it came up?
If I saw it in the newspaper and had a moment to...
And I asked you this, or I think Mr. Kruger may have asked you this earlier. Did you see still photographs or perhaps video that displayed Mrs. Schenecker?
Several.
Several of them? And in the course of observing those videos or those still photos, I think you made mention of the fact that your impression was mental illness. Did you have any other impressions about after looking at those?
Just that I couldn't imagine anything other than somebody who was very, very mentally ill to have killed their children.
In the course of all the things that you read and all the things that you were able to see, did you feel captured enough by this incident that you discussed it with your husband or with friends or co-workers, or, neighbors? Did you have conversations about this incident?
Yes.
Did you share your opinions, or did you have any opinions that you shared with people?
Yes.
What opinions did you have? Did you form any fixed opinion about this incident?
I believe I did.
Did you formulate a fixed opinion about guilt or innocence, for example?
That never seemed to be in debate, that aspect of it.
So what does that mean when you say that? Did you formulate an opinion about that because you felt it was already not in debate?
I think it was presumed when I had a conversation with anyone that that the murders had occurred and the mother had killed the children, and what would prompt this action. As a mother myself and talking to other mothers, we kind of wondered, how would you get to that state?
Okay. If you have opinions that you have developed over the course of some time now, are you able to set them aside if you were selected to be in this jury? Or are they strong opinions that you have within you that this person is responsible for this, and that's the way you feel about it? End of story.
Again, as I mentioned, I think I would have, it would be difficult, but I feel duty-bound to follow procedure.
You're the only one that knows how difficult it would be. You're the only one that knows what the purpose of this portion of trial is, to find out from prospective jurors if they can come into the situation and do nothing but follow the instructions of the court and listen to the evidence. And you're the only one that could possibly answer for any of us. That's why it gets to be, I mean, a point we're pushing on you, but we're hoping that you can let us know, are you able to set aside previously fixed opinions about what happened or what didn't happen, or guilt or innocence, instead, just if you're a member of the jury, do nothing but be a clean slate and listen to the evidence that's presented to you. And you mentioned you may have a hard time with that. That's what gives me pause and why I'm asking you about it. And I mean, you say you would have a hard time. You think you'd have a hard time setting aside opinions you've already brought to the table about this case?
I'm not sure I said I would have a hard time, but I think
But in your words, you have some reservation, I imagine, for what you did, Mr. Pruder.
I do have a lot of reservations because this is probably one of the most serious participating on a jury for this trial would be a very serious matter, and one I don't take lightly and would and have thought about already a lot. So yes, I have to be honest, it's very difficult to reconcile all those feelings and all that information. But I look at the judge who asked us earlier to follow the law and do our duty, and do I do that? I'm not sure I'm being clear. So.
Well, you're clear in the sense that you said you would try to do that. So I take your word at that. But my direct question was, would you be successful in setting aside any previous opinions you may have had, or impressions that you may have had about what happened or didn't happen, guilt or innocence, those kind of things? Can you do that?
I would try to start square one with you, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Duval. Please exit the courtroom.
Your Honor, it's, I think, incumbent upon me to flush out the record in the sense that the individual she described as her cousin, Jake Trezevan, is an assistant U.S. attorney who I worked alongside of and I consider a friend, and I have socialized with on occasion. I knew of her husband when he worked for us, and obviously I had met Miss George at some point socially, probably through Jay Trezevan. So, for whatever worth that is, but it'll be in the record.
Judge, I'm certain that in the course of general hire, I'll explore that further if necessary, but right now I have no motion to make regarding this juror.
I do.
In spite of not knowing her, her knowing him.
I do, Judge. She's obviously an intelligent, introspective person who understands her duties as a juror, but I think, and she gave great thought and contemplation to the questions, but I think there is some equivocation on whether she is capable to set aside the great extent of information and impressions and opinions she had formed up to this point.
Anything else, sir?
Judge, I felt that when she was asked those questions, in fact, I thought she was asked repeatedly, certainly by me, she said that she understood her duties as that were explained to her by the court, and she felt that she could do that job. So I would...
Observation from the court, I think she was very introspective, but very, very hesitant in answering a number of those questions. Very equivocal. I think that's the word that was used. It causes this court concern about whether or not she indeed set all that aside and be fair and impartial. So I'm going to grant the state motion 133 is excused for cause. 134 indicates some knowledge.
Judge, can we approach just while the other jurors coming in?
Yes, ma'am, you can have a seat right there. I'm going to allow the attorneys to ask you a few questions. Ask that you speak up in a strong voice as you respond.
Yes.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Yesterday, you indicated to us that you have some knowledge or information about this case from some outside source. Is that correct, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. What was the source of the information?
Television, newspaper. I've pretty much read everything and paid attention to what I've heard on TV and read the articles I've seen in the paper.
Okay. Was your exposure to that information recent, closer to the time of the events, or both?
Both.
Do you recall the summary that Judge Battles gave you and the other members of the panel yesterday about the case?
Yes.
Have you heard information in those reports that was information in addition to or different from what Judge Battles has read to you?
You mean regarding the case? Or
Yes, ma'am.
the details or
Yes.
specifics? I remember hearing or reading that the son was found in the garage and the daughter was in her room at her computer. The difference being that it sounded as if they were both found inside the home as opposed to the garage.
Okay. Any other details you can recall gleaning from those news reports about perhaps the investigation or the defendant?
Anything different from what was stated yesterday?
Or in
No.
addition to? Was there more information that you have that perhaps Judge Battles didn't talk about yesterday?
Details.
Please
yes.
tell us about that.
Well, I recall I was watching the news on January 28th and 29th, 2011, and I recall the details that they gave about the mother worried about her daughter and calling her daughter and not answering the phone. And then I don't recall who it was that went to the home to check on her, but finding the children, or finding the daughter on her patio, kind of incoherent and, maybe had taken drugs or something. She seemed to be incoherent. And then just the details of finding the children and that the husband was assigned or, out of the country.
Okay. Anything else that you recall that you haven't said to this point?
Now, I just recall feeling that it was horrific, and how could somebody do that?
Do you recall whether you saw any images of the defendant, whether it be still photography or video images of the defendant in those news reports or broadcasts?
Yes.
What do you recall in that regard?
Well, I recall her being walked with the policeman or someone walking her, and she seemed to be delirious or just completely out of sorts.
Okay. The Constitution of our state and our federal Constitution gives to any person charged with a crime a very important right. That right is the right to be presumed innocent of any criminal charges leveled against that person. That right, that presumption of innocence, stays with the defendant up to the point in time when the prosecution, if it does, presents evidence to prove guilt beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt by evidence in court. Do you understand that?
Yes.
With that in mind, I want to ask you the following questions. Did you form any fixed or definite opinion as a result of anything or everything that you saw in the media about the defendant's guilt or innocence of these charges?
I felt that she was guilty.
Okay. Is that an opinion that you still hold today?
Yes.
With that opinion, will you be able to give the defendant that presumption of innocence? In other words, the starting point being that she's presumed innocent. Is that an opinion you can set aside in your analysis?
I don't think I can.
As a result of that, do you have any concerns as to whether or not you can be a fair and impartial juror in this case?
I don't feel that I could.
Thank you for your
Yeah.
time. I appreciate it. Hold on one second. Just for a second.
Any questions?
No, Judge.
Thank you, ma'am. You may step out.
Remember to strike 134 cause.
No objection.
So no objection, 134 struck for cause.
And I would just ask the court to take additional notice of, in my line of sight, there's a photograph of a retired judge that somehow or another seeps into my colloquy with the jurors. Not that there's any resemblance, I'm just saying that's what the source of that was.
I appreciate that. I wish I had the experience and the knowledge of Judge Patty.
You must be referring to Judge Fleischer's picture.
All right, appreciate it.
I won't call you Judge Fleischer.
Number 137 indicates hardship and knowledge. Yes, sir, you can have a seat. We're going to allow the attorneys to ask you a few questions. I ask you to speak up in a strong voice so everyone can hear.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Yesterday you indicated that service on the jury may present some type of hardship. Could you explain that, please?
I'm going to stand because I'm not very loud.
Yes, sir.
I have a couple of issues.
Yes, sir.
The major one is sciatica. I just had a major incident in the last month where I was in a lot of pain, still am. And I missed a week of work. I couldn't stand for a week. I've been under the care of a chiropractor, and I still am. And the period of waiting this week just to come in here seems to have put me backward as far as my recovery. It's been a slow and steady recovery, but it requires that I have the freedom to get up and move around. Standing and sitting is the worst thing possible for me. And I really don't want to go back where I have to lay down again.
Okay, sir. You mentioned there was another, not to belittle that, you said there was another issue also?
Well, also, I have a 20th anniversary coming up next week, and my spouse and I have been planning a major celebration for about a year now. And this, being on jury would require me to probably cancel those plans. It's something I really don't want to have to do.
Okay. Was the plan for that to occur locally, or does that involve a trip?
It involves a trip.
Okay. And in that vein, are you already out of pocket for prepaid expenses for other travel or lodging?
Yes, a cruise. It was about $6,000.
Do you know whether any or all portion of that is non-refundable?
It is all non-refundable.
Are you taking any type of medication for your sciatica, sir?
Nothing but natural means. I take curcumin for inflammation. I do stretching exercises. My boss at work is very understanding and lets me leave my position whenever I need to, taking walks around the block. I do stretching exercises every morning.
Just out of curiosity, how's the curcumin, how's that work?
I find that way better than NSAIDs because they upset my stomach, and I think cumulatively that's not healthy.
Okay. Let me give you some insight into what you might be facing if you were chosen as a juror. We would be in another room. The seats are somewhat similar to that. Over there in the jury box, we take breaks once in the morning and the afternoon for about 20 minutes, and there's a lunch break. I won't address whether you would be able to get up and stand around or move or anything, but the chairs and seating is not too unlike what you've been to outside. And has that caused you physical discomfort?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I've been pacing up and back.
Okay. Would your physical discomfort cause you difficulty in paying attention and focusing on the evidence and the testimony?
Yes, I definitely have a concentration problem when I'm in pain.
That's understandable. Let me move on to the other issue. You indicated that you had knowledge from some other source about this case.
I remember the case from when it occurred, and also I heard the news over the weekend, and as late as yesterday morning in the clubhouse where I do my stretching, somebody had B News 9 on, and I heard the case as well.
Has the information and your exposure to that information caused you to form a fixed and definite opinion as to the defendant's guilt, for instance?
It's hard for me to say whether the news caused me to have an opinion. I definitely have an opinion based on my knowledge. My opinion is that I guess I have some experience working as a caseworker, and I personally don't consider mental health issues to be a factor in homicide.
All right, thank you, sir. I have no further questions. I think I would have a motion.
Any questions, Coach?
No, Judge.
Thank you, sir. You can step out.
Thank you.
He's asking the court.
Judge, I'll move to strike jury number 137 for cause.
Yes, that's my motion. I think the sciatica.
On the motion of the state as defense, 137 is struck because scheduled counsel step up for 1 second. discussing schedule, what's going to happen now is we are going to go ahead and take that noon break. And in fact, we're going to set a return time of 1:15 p.m. Now, that is for the individuals that are out there now. When they return, they are to be guided and they are to be located in the judicial conference room. There's sufficient room for them in there now, correct?
Yes, sir.
Recall, we have the reporting to jury services, the panel of 100 that is due to report there later than 1 o'clock p.m. downstairs in jury services in that auditorium. And you come back and discuss that with me, because there'll come a point when we'll bring that group up to be in the main part of the lobby. Okay? But we'll discuss that for a moment. And council, I'll need you back in place and everyone ready to go at 1:15. We'll start as promptly as we can. Anything from state or defense, we'll take this break.
Yes, sir.
Nothing, Judge.
All right, 1:15.
That's ready for the